It did not happen overnight. In fact, this was a very standard foundation crack, probably in its early ages. It's at a drop down in a concrete foundation. This property is in the Providence area, and the property actually slopes off from the high level, which would be the street, down towards the backyard. And so the concrete will go in levels where it goes straight and then it drops down a couple feet and then straight and then drops down a couple feet to follow the contour of the land. Very, very common for construction. We see it all the time. And a lot of times we see cracks developing on that corner where the drop down or the step down the foundation is. And part of the reason why is that as concrete cures, it starts to shrink a little bit from when it's originally poured. And as it shrinks, it causes stress around right angles. So we see them typically in corners of windows, we see them in beam pockets, and also on step downs of the foundation. And so we'll see a hairline crack develop very early on, usually within the first 6 months after the pour, that goes from the corner down towards the floor and is generally considered more of a settling or shrinkage crack, and by all measures is not a structural issue. And a lot of people just ignore these, and because they're not usually nuisances, they're there, you can see them, they go from the inside to the outside, but they're not necessarily one where water's always flowing through there, or you're seeing something that would cause you concern in the structure of the house. I usually do caution people to say, well, you don't know what's going to happen to the house or to the landscape with these types of properties. So you want to get these early while it's inexpensive to do a full through the foundation repair where you're actually physically binding everything together, making it a continuous piece of concrete again. In this particular case, the foundation was poured in the early 90s, and the house was kind of left undisturbed for a long period of time. And as the years went on, one homeowner decided that they wanted to level off part of the yard and build a retaining wall to undercut and level off the back. Again, very common, something that is totally acceptable to do with the landscape was there. And they used railroad ties as their holdback of the soil. And what they did, and probably rightfully so, is they anchored the foundation to the retaining wall to help give it stability on that side. Well, they did that just to the right or just over the side of the crack, which was a hairline in its early stages. And as the soil conditions changed and the backfilling happened and years of exposure happened, that wall actually pulled on the house. Now, normally that's not a problem because the whole structure is, one monolithic slab. It's all together in continuous concrete, and that's what the house is designed to do, is to be able to support these loads. But because the foundation was cracked in almost that exact area, the weight of that wall and the soil behind it helped pull the foundation apart. And so what was once a hairline crack is now probably somewhere in the order of an inch and a quarter. And that movement, which was caused not necessarily by shifting of the house, but actually the weight of the soil pulling on the foundation, dragging it down the slope a little bit. This could have easily been avoided early on, and what now is a much larger project, a much bigger repair, and a much more structural capacity could have been easily dealt with early on. And so when I tell people even though it's not leaking, nobody thinks about what's going to happen down the line and what homeowners may or may not do to these properties. And these things, which are normal things to do in landscaping, may put stress on a foundation, which you don't necessarily think about. And now, which was a small retaining wall causing a major issue, turned a less than $1,000 repair into a much more expensive one, including having to take down the entire wall and redo it. So simple miscalculation by the previous homeowner caused major damage to the foundation. All could have been avoided with a simple repair done early on. So if you see the foundation cracks early in the stages, or you're not sure if this is going to have future impacts, call us, email us, send us photos. We can give you a sense for what is happening here and what things you have to look out for. Sometimes we can just monitor it. Sometimes it's probably going to be recommended for repair, but you do have to look at these at a case by case, and just don't ignore things just because they're not leaking, because it can cause future structural issues down the line.